Today we're going to work with one of the hardest leathers in the world to work with and make a 200+ pound experiment. Hey friends, it's Will and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I recently got a commission for a beautiful handbag. It's mostly going to be made of French goat skin, I should say. It's obviously not made yet, but it's going to have a glazed alligator handle and front pocket. Now I will be recording it, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. But I've got a lot of experience working with alligator, a lot of experience, but I haven't worked with glazed alligator in about a year, and I thought before I start working with such a difficult leather to work with, and I'll tell you why it's difficult to work with in a moment, I would make something that is technically very challenging so I can remind myself how this absolutely gorgeous leather behaves. So we're going to make a watch strap, which is very, very technically challenging to make. Really challenging actually. It's one of the hardest things that you can make because it's so small and fiddly and so many aspects to it. But we're going to make it with the same, literally this skin is going to be used in this new handbag. Obviously I'm not using the part of the skin that's going to be used in the handbag. That's going to be made of the belly and part of the tail, but I needed to use a little bit of the tail, enough that I could make a watch strap so I can see how it behaves. The thing about glazed alligator and glazed crocodile for that matter is if you buy it and it's glazed with friction, so they use a arm that rubs it really hard with a glass rod. It's not got a chemical glaze to it because some exotics are glazed with a chemical, and it's really challenging. The glazing process doesn't just make it shiny, it makes the scales super tough. So this is 1mm thick, but normally an unglazed skin that's a millimeter thick would be quite soft, but because of the glazing process it's really hard. So we're going to be lining it with God, I can't remember what this is called. It's by Tannery Haas and Zermatt. It's a very is in fact the only leather I use for lining watch straps. I don't know if I'll use this watch strap. I probably will. I really like blue. This leather was obviously chosen by my client in the color that my client wants, so I ordered it specifically for her, so I probably will wear it. However, if it's a size that you guys want, it will be for sale. So if I don't sell it, I'll wear it myself. It's 21mm at the top and 18mm at the buckle, and it's size medium. Obviously I'm not putting any holes in this one because I don't know if I'll be wearing it, but it'll be ready to wear. Just to remind you guys to subscribe, but I've also turned on channel memberships and I will be doing channel member only content and tutorials, so don't forget to become a channel member, like, comment and subscribe as well. And I'm backing the Zermatt with some Velodon. Now this is it's a bit like paper in the fact that it's very condensed fiber, however it's unstretchable. Completely unstretchable. It's very commonly used in watch straps and belts because it doesn't ever stretch. So it can also be used in shoulder straps. I think it's used sometimes in the shoe industry, but I can't quite remember because I don't work in the shoe industry. But it's a phenomenal leather for that. So one of the things about glazed alligator is because it doesn't have a chemical finish giving it the glaze, it can get a little bit dull when you work with it. So one of the things about this project is I wanted to work with it to the point where I could see how much handling would be required, how much handling it could take before the finish starts wearing off. So I wanted to see what the finish would do with a bit of handling. I wanted to see what the finish would do with a little bit of, with very moderate temperature of creasing. So I'm going to set my creasing iron to a 4, or if yours goes up from 1 to 100, it's about a 40. And that creased gorgeously. The thing is, because it's already been glazed with friction, so it's already been essentially heat treated. It's not a heat treatment, but the friction that causes the glaze obviously causes heat, so it's quite resistant. So if you try to crease it with a lower temperature, if you try to level 4 creasing on something like a matte finish Himalayan crocodile, for instance, you'd burn it almost immediately. It's very, very, very light to crease a Himalayan crocodile because it's not finished when it's matte, obviously. But with this, because it's already got that friction treatment, it's very difficult to crease. But it's also very difficult, in fact impossible, to glue to unless you scrape that finish off. So when I was gluing the tip of the watch strap to the lining, I use a 5mm overlap. This pattern is available on my website. The link will be in the description box below. But I knew that if I didn't scrape the finish off, the glue just wouldn't stick ever. It just wouldn't. It would just peel straight off the glazed finish. So I needed to figure out how to scrape it, the best way to scrape it. All of these things are really, really important, because in the handle that I'm going to be making, the fold over at the ends, it's a MS Kelly style handle. It's you need to glue it to the leather underneath. So this is such a good project for this type of thing. And kind of the lesson I wanted to teach you guys today is, when you get a new project, if you haven't worked with that leather before, or you haven't worked with that leather in a while, you need to remind yourself how to work with it. Because if it's a project for you, I say it doesn't matter how it turns out. Obviously we want everything we make to be gorgeous and perfect, but it isn't always, let's be honest. And a project for someone else, someone that's paying for the leather, paying for your time, paying for your expertise, expects perfection. I mean, that's a topic for another day, expecting perfection, but they do. When they're paying a lot of money for something, they expect it to be perfect. Now, because again, I mentioned in the past, I have worked with glazed in the past. I have about a year ago, but I haven't worked with it since then. So I really needed to remind myself, okay, when I do this to it, when I pull out the pricking irons in this way, does it damage it? One of the things I reminded myself that was really, really helpful is, one, the fact that you can never bend glazed crocodile or alligator back on itself. It will instantly crease. I don't know why, actually, to be fair. However, I did remind myself that if you bend it back on itself, so not when like the turn in the watch strap that you can see me doing now is obviously a bend not towards itself, and that is perfect. It looks fantastic. Very difficult to do, and there was a lot of massaging involved. But when you're bending it back on itself, whether that's accidentally or on purpose, it instantly creases. Now, one of the things I did off camera, I forgot to record it, was you can use a bit of heat. I set my machine to a 4 or a 40, depending on what machine you have. And I managed to get those creases out using a brass scale tip. They're beautiful tips. They're used literally for getting creases out of scales. And that was really, really helpful, because all of these things, this watch strap, I mean, it came out beautifully, but it doesn't actually matter. This is part of the tail that I won't be using. That was for the project, so it didn't matter if it turned out poorly or not quite as amazingly as I wanted it to. It was purely an exercise in, okay, what can I do to this leather? What can this leather take that and still remain looking amazing? And what can this leather take that I can recover it from? So you might be wondering, why didn't I cut the backing, the lining of this down to size beforehand? One of the things about lining something, anything, is that when you stitch it, it can pull it in slightly. So one practice I like to do is not cutting my lining leather until after I've stitched it, in case it pulls. But this was such an amazing project for me to do, to see just how much this can take, because after I finished it, I managed to get most of the glaze back with a little bit of heat and a little bit of polishing with a cloth and some reptile polishing cream. I can't remember what it's called, Reptan I think, and it brought it back to not quite glazed, but very, very polished, and it worked really, really well. And that was kind of the point. I know I'm talking a lot in this video, but it's not a, oh look what I made, it turned out amazingly. Yes, it turned out really, really well. I'm very pleased with how it did turn out. This is the massaging I was talking about, by the way. Yes, it did turn out really, really well, but if it didn't, that wouldn't have mattered, because it's not a project for it to turn out perfectly. It's a project for me to think, okay, what can I do to this? How much can it handle? And if I go too far, can I recover from it? So when I was prick marking the long end of this, I don't think I showed you it actually. When I was prick marking the tail, the tongue, I'm not sure what you'd call it, but the long end of the strap, when I was pulling the prick marker, when I was pulling my pricking iron out, it twisted slightly, which resulted in a little bit of a crease, and I thought, okay, that's actually good, because I can see what do I need to do at this stage to get rid of that crease, to get rid of the imperfection that I've caused. I can play around with this a little bit to work with it in a way that I can recover it and see if I make this, in air quotations, mistake with my commissioned product, I can recover it. So it was brilliant in that sense. One of the things I did discover when I was prick marking it, is it's really, really bloody difficult to prick mark. As one of my subscribers likes to remind me, he loves the word chungus, and this leather is fucking chungus. It's ridiculous. It is thick. Well, the thing is, it's not thick. It's really, really hard. Glazed alligator / crocodile. When I say it's glazed reptile, is really, really hard. If I was to make a bag out of anything that I wanted to last through the fucking apocalypse, it would be glazed reptile. Like, you can scratch it, yes, but you can bring that scratch back out with heat. If you put too high a heat into an unglazed finished reptile, you destroy it. It's that simple, you'll burn it. With this, I didn't. The other thing that was really good to find out about it was that stitching it's really, really difficult, because I stitched this in number 10, so a 2.7mm. It's quite a fine stitch for me, and I used a 0.45. Normally an M4 I think it is in Misi Superfine. I can't quite remember what millimeter that is, but it's the thinnest thread I use. And it was difficult because, again, you're pulling this thread through a really, really hard leather. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic week. Take care.